Hi, this is another video in which I will present a grammatical problem in a Columbia School perspective. Today I want to talk to you about the use of Spanish ser and estar. Both verbs mean to be in English, and so the fact that Spanish has two verbs for one corresponding verb in English or in Dutch or in German and many other languages is usually a problem for the teaching of Spanish as a foreign language. Now, let me first tell you what the traditional grammar books say on the use of ser and estar, and I will be focusing a bit on the use with adjectives because that is where the major problem lies when foreigners want to use ser and estar. But in the meantime, we will see that this what I'm offering here can also be used for use of ser and estar in general. Now, traditional grammar books usually say that ser is used with qualifying adjectives and gives a permanent characteristic of the subject, whereas estar is used with perfective adjectives and usually has a temporary interpretation as the meaning of the adjective is concerned. And then there is a third group of adjectives, which are the so-called polysemic adjectives, and they can take both ser and estar. Now, this line of reasoning has a problem because how can we recognize these adjectives as being permanent or temporary, etc., etc.? There is no formal way, and when we have the so-called polysemic adjectives, the question is if it is really polysemic or are they just different interpretations of a same basic meaning. So, for example, in these phrases 1 and 2, María es buena, Mary is good, and María está buena, Mary is attractive, and well, attractive is a quite moderate translation of está buena because this attractiveness has erotic connotations. I have to say. So the only observable difference is the one between ser and estar, and so my hypothesis is that the difference in interpretation is due to the difference in meaning between ser and estar. So my first conclusion is that grammar books have a fundamental circular way of reasoning. When an adjective goes with ser, then you have to interpret it in a certain way, etc., etc. When I want to treat this in a Columbia school kind of way, I have one problem because there is, as far as I know, no Columbia school study on ser and estar, on the difference in meaning. Now, what does Columbia School offer when dealing with this problem? Well, in my view, the major point of Columbia School of Linguistics is that there is a correspondence of one form and one meaning. So what I'm going to present here is a singular form for the verb ser and a singular meaning for the form estar. And I'm basing my hypothesis for a single meaning for ser and estar on Falk 1979. Falk has as a first hypothesis that ser indicates a deviation from a generally established norm. Now, what does he mean by that? First of all, I have to say that Falk deals with adjectives in most of his book, and he focuses on adjectives of corpulence and of beauty, and he studies these cases very cautiously, and that is how he comes to his hypothesis. Now, basically what we can deduce from this is that ser, the use of ser, indicates that entities are being ordered, and entities can be both animate and inanimate in significant categories, and that is what humans do when they try to represent reality in language. With the verb ser in Spanish, you classify or categorize these entities. You put them into categories so that you can handle them. Now, the classified entity is the participant in focus, or the grammatical subject of the inflected form of ser. With this in mind, now we can understand why grammar books present certain prototypical categories as associated with ser, like professions. Juan es médico. So a profession is a category of a subject, and that is why professions are always presented using the verb ser. By the way, when someone is temporary, some profession that he basically is not, then in Spanish you use está de. For example, Juan está de camarero. John is working as a waiter. But we'll come back to that later. But also materials. La mesa es de madera. The table is made of wood. This is again a fundamental characteristic of mesa. So mesa is being classified, being categorized as being of wood, and so on and so forth. One of the problems is that events are also presented with the verb ser. Now, my explanation is that ser classifies events in time and place, and that is the reason why, contrary to most intuitions, events are always presented using the copular verb ser, as in la fiesta es a las 11, the party is at 11 o'clock, or la manifestación es en la plaza de armas, the demonstration is at the Armas Square. Now, what does Falk say about estar? Estar, according to Falk, indicates a deviation of an individual norm. So first we had a general norm established by a speakers community, and now we are talking about a deviation of an individual norm. And again, as I said, Falk only talks about adjectives indicating beauty and corpulence, so he's comparing the individual with previous or other phases of this particular individual. Well, you would have to study Falk in order to see how he arguments this, but what I have deduced from his reasoning about the deviation of an individual norm is that you can derive a proposed general meaning of estar, saying that estar indicates the relevance, and with relevance I mean the contextual importance of the circumstances of the participant in focus, in other words, the grammatical subject. So that is my hypothetical meaning that I think may be used in all instances of estar. So the relevance of the circumstances of a participant in focus is the meaning of estar. And in principle, I should be able to use it to all uses of estar. Like, for example, the prototypical circumstance, which is place. And of course, phrases like ¿Dónde está Juan? Where is John? Is precisely about this particular circumstance. Or está en Inglaterra, en el jardín, as an answer to this question, he is in the garden or he is in England. Now those are so places where someone is, but keep in mind the use of places in relation to events. That is a classification of an event. But here we're talking about circumstances of a particular grammatical subject. Now let us focus a bit more on the use of ser and estar with adjectives, and maybe we get a bit closer to what Falk says. Now what we can do, and that is what Falk says when ser indicates a deviation from a general norm, let us use the adjectives guapo y feo. Guapo is pretty and feo is ugly, and let's take a couple of iconic persons. So in one of the pictures we can see Antonio Banderas, and I think that the general norm for Antonio Banderas is that he is the classical Latin lover, so we can classify or categorize him as being guapo. He is handsome, es guapo in Spanish. On the other extreme, we have a classical figure like Marty Feldman, and Marty Feldman was a comic, and one of the things that he used in his comical work was his appearance, and he had this crazy, these funny froggy kind of eyes, and he had a dent in his forehead and so on. So we can say that according to the general norm, Marty Feldman could be considered ugly, or in Spanish, es feo. So they are being classified in normal in these normal generalized categories of handsome and ugly. Now in the middle I have put a picture of well, you may have recognized her, Marilyn Monroe, but in this picture she doesn't wear any makeup and so on, and we can classify her as, you know, kind of maybe average in this way. But when we take into account certain circumstances, for example, when Marilyn Monroe was about to get married, then all of a sudden you can say in Spanish, "Qué guapa está Marilyn en su traje de novia." So how pretty Marilyn is in her wedding dress. And now we see that Marilyn Monroe is has her makeup on, she's beautifully dressed and so on and so forth. And now we are not classifying her anymore. We're taking into account the circumstances of her being pretty. And the circumstances obviously are her wedding, her dress, and her makeup. Now, so what I'm doing when I'm classifying or categorizing participants in focus, then what matters is the comparison with others. We are referring to general norms as far as this classification is concerned. But once we have relevant circumstances of the participant in focus, we are comparing him or her with herself under other circumstances, and that is when estar comes in. Now let me give you a final example. The previous examples obviously were invented by me using pictures and so on and so forth, but here we see an example from El País, the Spanish quality newspaper, about the royal wedding of Princess Elena. And here we see a quote from this article that was in 1995, 25 years ago. The royal wedding in which it was said that Elena estaba guapa de novia. Elena was beautiful as a bride. And of course here we see the verb estar, and the relevant circumstance obviously was the wedding. And of the king, her father, it was said that el rey no oculta estos días lo feliz que está por la boda. The king does not hide these days how happy he is, using estar in Spanish, and because of the wedding. So it is obviously the wedding that is the relevant circumstance that causes the use of estar in these particular contexts. So in conclusion, in my opinion, I have presented two invariable basic meanings for ser and estar, and they can account, and if you study some more cases, they can account for all of its distribution, not only with adjectives, but what they do cause is variable interpretations of the adjectives, and these variable interpretations are the result of the rest of the context, including the copular verbs. And to close this down, I give you the reference of Johan Falk in case you want to know more about his work on the adjectives of beauty and corpulence. So I hope this small video helps you to establish a single meaning for both ser and estar, and when you study examples you will see that you can really explain the distribution of these two verbs, including the variations, when you take these basic meanings into account. I hope you like this video. Please put some comments and I will try to answer them as good as I can. So, hope to see you again in the next video.